This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance.
Hey everyone, Ryan Green here, and today we are back with another installment of guest submissions here on the PSA Pod. Guest submissions features in-depth hobby conversations. We welcome in a variety of guests to our studio, from prominent expert leaders within the collectors family to respected hobby voices, collectors, and personalities across all genres in the hobby. The goal is to inform and entertain from several different angles, whether it's discussing product developments and enhancements that improve the PSA customer experience, or simply talking shop and collecting from different perspectives. Collectors of all levels and experience will enjoy what lies ahead. Today, joining us is Brett McGrath, better known as Stacking Slabs on Instagram if you're in the hobby, and the host of the Stacking Slabs podcast. A longtime tried and true collector, Brett is all about not just player collecting, but collecting what you love and what truly connects with you. We're having Brett back with us today as he's the perfect guest to have on as we dive into the discussion of player collecting in the ultra-modern era. So Brett, first, before anything else, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Ryan, always a pleasure. Any opportunity I can have at taking a little break in the action from the workday to talk cards and collecting, I'm always game for it. So thanks so much for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. We're excited. I'm always excited for these conversations with you. And for those who maybe are not familiar and haven't heard your previous appearances on the show, let's get a quick refresher to our listeners about your history of player collecting and collecting in general. It's largely rooted on the football side. That's what we're going to be talking about today, in your love of the Colts, who play just down the road from your home in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so a big football guy, primarily a football card collector. I am also a wrestling degenerate, so I do collect wrestling cards and am deep in the weeds on that. What really drives my collecting is my fandom around the NFL and mostly the Colts specifically. That has spider-webbed out into different sets and products and parallels that I love. But if you were to ask me what is the number one thing you collect, I would say Colts quarterbacks. And part of what I'm trying to do is tell the story and the history of that position with my favorite team through my collecting.
And of course, collecting Colts quarterbacks, like there's some rich history there with the Peyton Mannings and Andrew Lucks of the world. And there's some interesting recent history with veterans who have come in, such as Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan. But now you're in a really fun spot from my perspective. So once the 4th overall pick in the draft last month was made, my first thought was, well, I need to talk to Brett McGrath about this. Oddly enough, later that night, I saw that you made your first Anthony Richardson buy. You shared it on Instagram with kind of some like, so it begins messaging. And I was just like, I was loving it. I was sitting there like clapping, seeing that post. Was your mind made up going into this NFL draft? You know, you knew a new quarterback was coming into town in Indianapolis. This was their first time really drafting a quarterback up high since Andrew Luck about a decade ago. Was your mind made up that with a new quarterback coming to town, this is my new collecting venture, this is my new project to focus on?
You know, I think inevitably that was a part of it. But what was the fun part of it for me was the buildup and anticipation and just the way the NFL has structured itself over the past few years. It's really become one of these year-round endeavors. If you just look at the calendar from the Super Bowl ending to free agency to the draft to OTAs to training, there's just always something going on. So as the NFL has been more intentional around the calendar view of what they're trying to accomplish, fans like myself, who's a season ticket holder, who are deeply passionate, are even more invested because there just seems to be content streams from everywhere, feeding us information. And so on the draft front, this is a critical draft for me as a Colts fan, obviously for the points that you just said. We had 20 years of, Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, and very fortunate to have those years and just so much fun to be a part of watching those two players. And on the other side, right, it's been a quarterback carousel. I will say, when most people 10 years from now look back on the quarterback carousel, most people are going to think about it as a pretty negative, ugly time to be a fan. But I will say, I just want to call it out. Like, the Phillip Rivers COVID year was really fun. And we made the playoffs and we could have beat the Bills. It's been kind of a headache. And then after last year, when the Matt Ryan of it all and the team just didn't work out, everyone knew that, like, okay, we're going to be picking 4. It's time to pick a quarterback. And so my mindset, I'm a draft junkie by nature. I'm even more of a draft junkie when my team is picking in the top of the draft and there's a quarterback involved. So I was deeply invested in the process. That's kind of an understatement. But what I'll share is that through my evaluation of all of the players and everything that was happening and just this moment in time for the organization, when we brought in Shane Steichen as the head coach, that was the moment where I said, this is where you take a swing and you go draft Anthony Richardson. So I was trying to be politically correct on the podcast, and whenever I fielded questions about who I wanted, why I wanted it, because I didn't want it seem, if it wasn't Richardson, to be a disappointment or come off as a disappointment, because I would have been happy about whoever it was. But deep down, I really wanted Anthony Richardson. And so when I heard his name called by Roger Goodell, it was like pure pandemonium and excitement. I had a buddy over. My wife was, luckily, she got out of the house because she knew it was going to be insanity. She went and she was seeing Hamilton with her mom. And so me and my buddy were eating pizza, and I think I had like pizza sauce on the ceiling of my house. I was just going nuts. So that just wanted to give you a little bit of a backdrop on just like that moment in time. But yeah, I've been reeling and just full of excitement ever since.
It's so funny you say that. Like it takes me immediately back. Like I've been on both sides of that. I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and I remember the 2017 draft, and the Bears traded up from number 3 to number 2. In hindsight, everybody makes fun of the Bears for drafting Trubisky over Mahomes, but at the time, like, Mahomes wasn't the guy. The guy was Deshaun Watson. Just won the national title. When they took Trubisky, I was like, I mean, maybe they see something. But I didn't have that level of hype. And then fast forward 4 years, they make the trade up, which they never do this much, like traded up like 6 spots to go get Justin Fields, who was the quarterback I wanted going into the draft. And immediately as a collector, like that was where my first thought went. It was like, all right, my collecting focus for especially the next probably 12 to 18 months is on this guy. Like I feel like emotionally invested now, and now I really want to invest my hobby into it. And I'm just going to assume that was one of your immediate thoughts.
Yeah. So I think, I went through oh man, we got the guy I wanted. And then, it was like, I was glued into my phone where you're texting all the group chats, you're checking Twitter, you're going to Instagram, I'm expressing myself. And it was like, there was about 10 minutes of that where I was glued to my phone, where I immediately said to myself, wait a minute, why don't I go and check out if there are any Anthony Richardson cards available? Like, that was my first thought. And so I pulled open eBay, and 15 minutes to go, literally auction style, there's a 2022 Bowman Chrome University Anthony Richardson gold refractor, just the auction. I had 15 minutes, and I looked at that card and I said, man, this is exciting because I get the opportunity to buy not only my new quarterback, but also visit a new product that is new, but also old. I'm a Peyton Manning collector. So when I think about Peyton Manning's rookie card, a lot of people visualize the Topps Chrome refractor in that view where they're panning up and he's, going that. I have always viewed the Bowman Chrome refractor as my Peyton Manning rookie card. That was the first card, one of the first cards I got when I got back into the hobby. So to me, there's a lineage with the Bowman brand in football that I haven't been able to collect in a while, outside of me, trying to pick off some gold Manning refractors that I don't have. So that was a part of it, where it was like I had seen Bowman Chrome University, but I had never had a reason to dig into it until now. I looked at, I pulled up Card Ladder. I looked at what the last Richardson gold refractor from the product sold for. And I not only made sure that like I was going to win this card, but like I put a irrational, absurd bid together because I wanted to not only own the card, but I wanted to tell the story that I was an Anthony Richardson collector on the day the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson, because he is now our quarterback, and that is why I collect. So all of these things kind of came together in one, and I won the card, and lucky for me in my wallet, the card went for like almost like half of what the last one sold for. And I kind of attributed it to like everyone was so consumed by the draft, and I was one of the few Colts collectors who decided at the time to go to eBay where this card was available, that I ended up winning it. So I actually have the card in my hand right now, and whenever I look at this card, it will always represent like the first card that I got on this new journey collecting my new quarterback.
That's awesome. That's and that's the kind of card that just stays in the collection. It's there because you have that moment to tie to it. You have that connection. You have that emotional connection with it. You're all in on this journey. You know, diving into a player collection, the way the kind of product and just general hobby landscape looks now, you know, what's kind of your general approach to it from, you know, the way you've thought it out so far? Are you going like the super collector grab everything route, or are you looking to be, you know, very focused on what you get, products and parallels you really like? And, you know, if so, kind of what are those areas of focus?
Just in general, the, you know, players have driven my collection for so long, but as I've matured and evolved in the hobby, what I know is really important to me is the product parallels and cards themselves. When I spend the money I do on a card and I pull it out of my case and I look at it, it's got to make me feel something, and it's got to hit me with those feels, and it's like almost making me feel like a kid again. So for me, like, I will not cast a wide net. I will certainly be fishing with the spear. I think identifying ahead of time, like, which I haven't done this in a while, but like I will be very mindful of product release calendar. I will be very mindful of strategy I'm going to take when there is a card that is in one of those products that I need. So I'm going to like try to like get organized around that. But then the other thing is, which I feel like has to be part of like this chat, is like we have seen over the last couple of years what's happened with these unproven rookie quarterbacks or first year guys and the price that their cards go for. So I know that I am going to be battling those conditions. And to me, that's where I feel like fandom really takes over. And I've said this, that sometimes about collecting, like the most irrational decisions that you make as a collector are oftentimes the best ones and the most memorable. So I'm not going to go into this saying like, I'm going to pay, 3X or 4X more than anyone else who's considering it, because then I would probably be struggling to pay my mortgage. But what I will say is that I'm going to be very mindful of the equity that I have built within my existing collection. And if there is that rare card from a product that I love that becomes available and the sticker shock on it is absurd, I will evaluate the decision that I make and likely be looking at my existing collection to say, is it time for any of these cards to go to help me get to that card that's given me utility value over the term as a collector, but now it's time to jump into something new. So that's my way too early, but how I'm trying to process what I'm about to walk into.
And it'll evolve as you go, especially with some of your other player collections. Like there's cards and parallels from like previous Panini products that you love that I'm sure you've already earmarked. When Anthony Richardson's version of that card comes out, I'm on the hunt for it. I know for me, I'm a big team color match parallel guy, right? So as soon as, the Bears had their quarterback, I said, I really want to get the true orange prism in a nice, like really nice condition, really nice looking card. Like that was already going to be like one of my North Stars. Do you have any with Anthony Richardson where you're already like, when that product comes out, maybe I'm not getting it right away as kind of until the prices settle a little bit, but are there any that are on your radar already as of right now that you know of?
I think that, I think the easy one, which probably is the most like, most people would be thinking about, would be like, I would be remiss if I wouldn't if I wouldn't be going after his first true gold prism card like that. If I look at my collection, a big chunk of my collection and buying habits revolve around that parallel. But then I think a parallel that I really love and maybe isn't talked about enough, but I love the certified product. I love the lineage of the certified product. And so I have the Matt Ryan Black Mirror 1/1 from this last year because I wanted to represent some of him and some of his best cards in Colts gear. And I was actually like, before we jumped on, I was digging through my case, looking at some cards I haven't checked out in a while. And I like pulled out this card and I had maybe seen it a couple times since I bought it. But I just looked at this card and I was like, man, these cards are so sharp. That is a card I would love to get an Anthony Richardson in. Granted, a 1/1 of a hot prospect quarterback is going to be tough to go by. But like, you know, I'll settle with the mirror gold as well. But like, I love the certified products in football. And that's just one I feel like doesn't get enough airtime.
So how do you view player collecting? You know, I know like you're big on the certified products, like you share on Instagram, like, and we'll share a link to your Instagram so people can take a look at some of your stuff if they're not familiar already. But you love sharing cards from, I believe it was the 2014 totally certified product. You're really big on that going back a ways. How do you view player collecting now in the hobby, not just in terms of the products available, but also the kind of community landscape now compared to say 10, 15 years ago, where, you know, I know for me, you know, as social media has grown and like Instagram's become a big part of it, there's so many more ways to create communities around player collections. There's so many more ways to connect with people and find those cards you're looking for. You know, how does it look different to you now as you dive in?
Yeah. So I think the access to collectors that are like-minded and the communication is greater than it ever has been before. An example that I'll give you is I am in a Peyton Manning collector chat. It has been my longest group chat on Instagram. I cannot wait to hang out with all of those guys at the National. We share in similar passion, and I level up my Manning knowledge every day by just listening, hearing what's being shared in that conversation. And it's like a blessing and it's a curse because someone starts to go talk about a specific year and a specific card, then my antennas go up, and then all of a sudden I'm exploring and I'm like, try to look for this card, and then I probably overpay when I find something like that. So that is like part of it, which is really fun. I think the best part of this is people who are communicating with like-minded collectors who share a similar passion want to sell their cards to those people. So instead of a card going to open market that might be rare and scarce, typically individuals in those chats get kind of first crack at it. And an example I'll give is this latest journey with my collecting has been very intentionally focused on Manning and Luck pairings throughout the years that they were playing together, which would be 2012 through 2015. A part of this is because Peyton Manning coming back to Indianapolis to play on Sunday Night Football against Andrew Luck. I was in the stadium. It was just such a emotional memory and moment. And going back and being able to like pair those my two favorite players of all time has been really important to me. Maybe 6 months ago, maybe even a year ago, I purchased a 2012 Contenders Andrew Luck cracked ice, which, you know, I paid a little bit for it, but I didn't pay nearly what it would be if, you know, he was still playing. But it's one of my favorite cards, and I love the cracked ice parallel, which would be another Anthony Richardson card I have to have. But anyway, a member of the group chat had two PSA 10 Peyton Manning 2012 first year cracked ice. So top two, and Jordan, I'll shout him out, Jordan Northwood's card collector. He's a good buddy. He had two of them, and so I checked in with him. I was like, hey, he's like, no, you know, I'm going to keep both of them for now, but I'll let you know when that time comes. Well, that time did come, and I was literally getting ready on a Monday morning, and he explained to me that he had an offer, but he wanted to give me first crack to match it if I wanted to. So I said, hey, I'm like driving my daughter to school. Like, let me get a moment to like wrap my head around this. And I got back to my desk and I started working, and then like probably 30 minutes into my workday, I just couldn't focus on anything else but the card. So I just like shot him a note. I was like, I need the card. Like, let's make this happen. So now like it was so fun to get that card from Jordan, pair it next to the Andrew Luck and take a picture. And like, it's when you do stuff like that, like those two cards I'll never sell. There's a story there. They are connected because of the pairing. And so, yeah, all that to say, like, that would have never happened if I wasn't in constant communication with other people who collect and are as passionate about Peyton Manning as me.
Man, that's amazing. I can't get enough of stories like that. And you know, you really nailed it. There's just so much more of that now. It really adds a layer of satisfaction to the endeavor of player collecting. And, you know, another thing about player collecting that I really love, especially with modern players, you know, for context, we talked about this, you know, I got out of the hobby in like the mid 2000s, around 2005, 2006. And I got back into cards around 2016. But when I got back in, a lot of it was collecting players who I'd grown up watching, right? Guys who were long retired, stuff from the 80s, 90s, things like that. I didn't really get back into active player collecting until I was really drawn in like 2019, 2020. And there's just another level to it of the thrill of player collecting of a young, you know, a lot of times unproven player who you feel emotionally invested in to a degree. You know, where there's kind of like that roller coaster ride with it. Like you kind of really enjoy it. A guy you really believe in, you see them succeed. You feel like emotionally invested in that. And, you know, I think there's a layer to that that's just that adds that's just really fun. You know, how do you kind of compare that with, because you're a guy who actively collects players who are both retired and active, you know, there's positives obviously to both, but you know, how do you look at kind of that with the roller coaster ride? Because it can be tough too.
Yeah, so when I got back into it, I felt like I went on full tilt with being a part of the roller coaster ride with players that I didn't even like really connect with. And I realized quickly that wasn't for me. So I haven't had a opportunity up until this one to not only get back on that roller coaster, but do it with a player who I'm going to literally buy his jersey. I'm almost a 40-year-old guy who buys jerseys of a kid and
nothing wrong with
his name on his back. And I walk to I will literally I'll be sleeping in my Anthony Richardson jersey. But like that, to me, that's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun to not only buy the cards and, you know, I'm buying these cards because they're helping curate my collection. And of course, I want the value. I want him to play well. I want him to overexceed expectations. I want my cards to go up in value. But like literally, like that's not what it's all about to me. Mm-hmm. But I would be remiss if I said like jumping on that roller coaster with a guy that I'm literally paying money to be in the stadium to see him every day, and also going to be buying his cards. Like, there's a lot of that really excites me. Because I know, and hearing other collectors in football, basketball, hockey, whatever, who are deep in the weeds on that, like, and their player is, you know, successful and like they're maybe about to win a championship or, you know, I know how much fun that is. So I'm excited to jump back on that roller coaster and get crazy for a little bit.
So I got to ask, like, we've talked about the cards so much, but as a player, like everybody knows, I think anybody who followed the NFL draft, like Anthony Richardson, out of this world tools, physically could just be a complete difference maker, unlike just about any quarterback to come in the league in recent years. Is a little raw, you know, only started 13 games in college. So everybody knows the knocks, you know, but it sounds like he's a little bit farther along progressed and closer to being NFL starter ready than maybe some had projected. What are your realistic expectations going into year one for him?
So my expectations for the Colts, I'll say for the Colts in general, are very little because I've gone so far with these high expectations and have been brought back down to earth. I think for him as a player, I just want to see progress. But again, like there's a lot of homer in me on this, and there's I am so optimistic on Anthony Richardson because of the environment and the coaching situation that he is walking into, which I feel like as an NFL fan doesn't get talked about enough. So many of these young quarterbacks get drafted, but they don't enter the right situation or they're not around the right coaches. Just look at Trevor Lawrence, for example. He didn't start playing football like everyone thought Trevor Lawrence was going to start playing football until Doug Peterson came in the fold. So I'm looking at the situation. I'm looking at my new head coach, Shane Steichen, who's coming off of a Super Bowl where Jalen Hurts literally went from, I don't know if this guy can be our quarterback, to look at that contract he just got. He's clearly the best quarterback in the NFC going into next season. And so the communication and how Shane Steichen pre-Anthony Richardson has talked about this rookie quarterback has been, I am going to customize the offense to meet the needs and the strengths of my next quarterback. So that is not a normal way to approach a offensive scheme and setup. So when I think about that, I think about the read option. Can you imagine being in the red zone where you've got 6'4", 225, 230 quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and you've got a healthy Jonathan Taylor there running an option? Like, if I'm a defense on the other side, like that, that's scary. So I'm excited to be a fan of a scary situation there. So I think he's going to make mistakes. It's part of the rookie quarterback journey, but there's going to be a lot of excitement. And I think, you as a Bears fan, like, it took the Bears a little while to figure out, you know what, time to take the training wheels off.
Yep.
Let's just let Justin Fields be Justin Fields. And when the Bears let Justin Fields be Justin Fields, he was the headline every week because he was doing exciting things because he's a freak athlete. So I'm expecting a similar scenario, hopefully earlier in Indianapolis.
And I felt vindicated when that happened. So I really do hope you get to experience that same thrill. And I hope that, I know for me buying cards, like it kept prices suppressed a little bit out of the gates. So I hope you can benefit from some of that too, Brett.
We'll see. The first 60-yard touchdown, he peels off.
That's when it blows
runs
up.
And then throws for three. Then I'm in trouble. Yeah. I know it.
Well, Brett, thank you so much. We had so much fun talking about this with you, and we're going to check back in with you probably later this year when football season is fully underway, because I do want some status updates on that collection as we go, even though I know, we'll swap them offline, but I want our audience to know too. This is, I'm really excited for your new collecting endeavor and love hearing your insights on it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. Always a pleasure to talk cards and football with you, and happy to chat again whenever it's the right time.
Awesome. Well, that's Brett McGrath, Stacking Slabs on Instagram, and Stacking Slabs is the name of the podcast. We're going to share links to both in the description. I'm Ryan Green. We will be back here again next week with more for you on the PSA Pod.